Welcome back, everybody, to the Christian Ainsley Show. In this week's episode proper, I'm going to be covering the flooding in Texas, a new project that I'm working on, and in the third segment, I'll be covering classical music, something I think everybody should know a little bit more of. Alright, welcome back to my show, everybody, the low budget show where I talk about whatever I want. Because I'm a narcissist. And yes, I do know that this show looks like garbage. And you want to know why that is, because I produce it, I edit it, I host it. I can't look in the camera as I'm editing it because my little screen is broken. So, if you guys want to improve this show, please subscribe and give me a reason to start a Patreon. But anyway, most importantly, we should talk about the flooding in Texas, because that is honestly something all Christians should be praying about throughout the world, even not just America, not just Texas, the world. From last I heard, there were 80 some people missing, 83 I want to say, and a lot of them have been confirmed dead, and that is terrible. That is just terrible. It can honestly really not be understated how terrible that is. Now, a lot of people are blaming Trump for this, and that's just not logical. Natural disasters just happen sometimes. I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's just something that happens. The truth is, we live in a fallen world that bad stuff happens. It will never be perfect until Christ's return. You can't blame just one person. It's all of us. We have all sinned, and we've all fallen short of God's glory, and that's why bad things happen. Just because this world is messed up. So remember, in life, when bad things happen, it's not God punishing you per se. Sometimes it's just because the world is screwed up. This is a concept that's heavily featured in the book of Job, and throughout the Bible as a whole, really. I mean, what happens right after Adam and Eve exit the garden? Well, their kids kill each other. Well, one kills the other. And he's banished by God. That's terrible. Terrible. Bad things have just happened since pretty much the very beginning. God created a perfect world, and we sinned, and now bad things happen. So remember to keep everyone in Texas really in your prayers. Keep everybody in your prayers. How about just always pray for everybody, especially those that are suffering. Always. And I realize that talking about natural disasters is just, occurrences is very hollow without real world experience, and I can say I have been through a natural disaster of a sort. It was much smaller than this, and as far as I'm aware, no lives were lost. But there were a lot of cattle that were lost, and that was devastating to obviously the cattle, but also to the ranchers that owned them. And this was in 2013, actually, the Atlas blizzard that hit the Black Hills region of South Dakota. And the truth is, it just happens. Like, honestly, that's why that's why insurance exists, is because some things just happen. By talking about my own experience, obviously, I'm not trying to downplay what's happening in Texas. Again, very, very terrible. Very, very sad. But sometimes bad things happen. and you can't blame a single person for that. You cannot blame just one person. We are all at fault here, everyone. Now for this second segment, I'm going to make an announcement, and I'm realizing as I'm saying this show will probably be shorter than my average, which is something I said last week, being this week, because last week's video I'm posting this week. Oh boy. This show's a mess from the start. Let's go. Oh boy. You know, the Ben After Dark show should give up the bad show moniker and give it to me, because this show, I haven't even released the first episode. I haven't edited the first episode before I'm recording the second one, so I think my show takes the cake for the bad show. But I do have an announcement for this second segment, which will normally be about entertainment type news, and that is I am creating a movie about Jesus. Now, that's not something that people tend to love, because, let's be honest, there are a lot of good Jesus movies out there. Passion of the Christ, for one, very good film. My biggest gripe with it is we don't really get to know Jesus before the crucifixion happens. And while as a Christian, obviously that shouldn't matter, because you should know Jesus more personally than any person who would normally watch a film. But for a newcomer to Christianity, that is a serious problem. That is a serious con for the movie. And that's why I would like to make my film, is I would like to get people to learn about Jesus himself. It will include the crucifixion, obviously, and yes, it will be brutal, because it was really, really brutal. There have been countless studies that have shown that even Mel Gibson's portrayal in The Passion of the Christ was like underdone. It was worse than that, and I believe that, and it won't be worse than Passion of the Christ, because one, The Passion of the Christ is long, and it's all about the Passion. Mine will not be. But no, I will have a lot more of Jesus' life, and particularly his ministry. And that's really the main reason I'm doing this is for people who want to learn about Jesus. They want a more proper understanding about Christianity, because to be honest, when you watch a lot of videos about street preachers and people just going out and sharing the gospel, a lot of the people that they talk to do not understand the gospel. They don't understand what they're arguing against. So that's what my film will be. It is purely to share the gospel plainly, in a very straightforward manner, because you get films like Son of God that it's good, but it's really hindered by the fact that it was first a like mini-series that was kind of recut into a film, and it feels like something off of the History Channel. But overall, honestly, Son of God is one of my favorite Jesus movies, but you can see that it came from a mini-series, and it was not originally intended to be a one film. And Passion of the Christ obviously is high up there, but again, the problem with Passion of the Christ is the passion and the fact that that's it. Honestly, if Mel Gibson, he's talking about making a sequel to it about the resurrection and Jesus's like time after the resurrection. I'm sure that will be great. I cannot wait. I've heard that it's very near to production, but you know, I don't think that's official. I don't think there's any official news on it. But a prequel to it would also be very good, where you get to know Jesus himself, because you see like the Sermon on the Mount, or a tiny part of it, the Last Supper basically, and Jesus making a table. I'm pretty sure that's the only scenes of Jesus you see that are before the Garden of Gethsemane, which is not bad. They are very effective with those 3 scenes. But for a newcomer to Christianity, it's not, I wouldn't say it's the best choice. Now, for an experienced Christian, Passion of the Christ is a great film. I'm not trying to compete with it. I'm trying to kind of just take a different route from it and be a good introduction to people. Now, of course, the best introduction to getting to know Jesus would be to go to church. But there are a lot of people that don't really want to go to church when they don't know anything about Christianity. And don't hear this the wrong way, but the Bible is not very easy to read if you haven't already been going to church. If you just pick up the Bible and start reading, it's not very beginner friendly, I should say. It's difficult. That it's not a criticism, it's just the truth. But that's why we are called to evangelize and spread the news, spread the good news. And that's what I'm doing with this film, is I'm going out and I am just sharing. Now, why am I announcing this now? Well, because my show is obviously very tiny right now. In fact, 0 views, because I haven't posted anything yet. But that's intentional, because this film is very early in pre-production. I am still drafting it, actually. We don't even have an official script yet. And that's very intentional. I want, as this show hopefully grows, pray to God for that. I'm putting this show entirely in His hands, and the movie after that. But if, as this show grows, hopefully my progress in the film will also grow, and maybe eventually I can start crowdfunding for it once I have a crowd. And I very much plan for the balls of this show and the Christ film to be rolling together, you know. That was my second segment today, which went on longer than I thought it would going into it, which is fine. I'll figure out the pacing of this show a lot more as we go on. Again, there's a reason I don't really care that the production quality isn't very high right now, because I myself am not very good at this yet, clearly, but you know, give it time. I'll get used to it. For my third segment today, I will be going over classical music, as I said in the intro. And the reason for this is because in my last episode, which is also airing today, I talked about Dvorak's Ninth Symphony in my second segment when I was talking about entertainment. That was because it is very much an American symphony, and that episode was supposed to come out on 4th of July, and it didn't because I kept running into audio errors. So now I'm just using my in-camera mic, so that's why the audio is so bad, but I didn't want to delay it 3 weeks. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know. My brain's a mashed potato right now. What is classical music? And that is a very difficult question. The answer to it truly is nobody really knows. Nobody really knows what classical music is. There's very much a Dunning-Kruger chart over this, where people that know nothing about classical music are like, oh, it's instrumental music. No, it's not. If you know a little bit about classical music, you move into the Valley of Despair, I believe it's called, and you're like, oh geez, classical music, there's a lot I don't know. And then as you really start to get to know it, you do start to climb up again, but you'll never have that same confidence as when you know nothing about it. And The as I said before, the layman's answer for this is instrumental music or music without words. And no, no, that's not classical music. Many classical works include choral sections, or the entire part is choral, such as Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Fourth movement has a lot of choral sections in it. Opera as a whole is just choral, mostly. Might have an orchestra with it, but or a piano or something, but no, it's mostly choral. And then a lot of instrumental works are very much not classical, like for example, elevator music. That is not classical. It doesn't follow a structure. Classical music is very, very structured. Now, there are definitely the more liberal classical people and the more conservative classical people. Some people will include a lot of categories under classical music, and a lot of people won't. Now, to explain this to you, first we need to define that classical music is divided into, at bare minimum, 3 genres. It is not one genre of music. Instead of thinking as like Spotify, how they label things as classical, think of it like Apple Music, where they have their normal music app, and then they have a completely separate app for classical music. They have the Apple Classical Music app. That is kind of what classical music is. It's just different. It's like contemporary music. I'd actually call classical music music, and then modern type music contemporary music, because classical's older, but that's not important right now. We can debate that some other time. But for now, what I'm trying to say is classical music has at least 3 genres. All 3 of them have multiple subgenres. So the 3 genres that everybody can agree on are the Baroque era. These genres are eras, by the way. There's the Baroque era, the Classical era, which is where classical music gets its name from, and the Romantic era. Now, you can't go around to people like, oh, what music do you like? I like romantic music. People won't know what that means, because they'll think you mean love songs. No. I mean romantic music, like the Romantic era of music. So it's difficult. Now, some people will add a 4th era in there, the Impressionist era, but even people that consider an Impressionist era usually only consider like 3 composers, like Debussy and like Chopin. That's it. Like, there's another one that they consider in there, but I can't remember who, because I'm not into Impressionist music, so I don't really know. But it's very small, at least compared to the other 3, so I wouldn't really count that. I would add 2 or maybe 3 categories. I'd add, at bare minimum, modern, which would be like any modern day symphony that's written, something after the Romantic period that's written, because symphonies are still being written today. John Williams wrote a symphony, he just hasn't released it, so you should start a hashtag movement for that. Hashtag release the John Williams symphony. It had 1 premiere and it's never been recorded, so I don't know. I think it's been in 3 movements. And I think I heard the 2nd movement is kind of jazzy, but I don't know. I really don't know. So modern music, and then I'd add programmatic music, which would be mostly like film scores, because a lot of the classical music conservatives, as I mentioned before, would not count film scores to be classical music because they're like, classical, that's old music. You know, it has to have that old feeling. And I'm like, well, yes, but at the same time, Holst's The Planets, I'm pretty sure it came out like 13 years before the Wizard of Oz film came out. Is 13 years the difference between old music and modern music? That doesn't feel right to me. I don't agree with that. I would definitely be on the more liberal side when it comes to what counts as classical music. Now there are the hyper liberals that say, "Oh yeah, metal music is basically classical." No, 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 no. That feels completely different. And if you want to consider metal, that needs to be like that needs to be its own like genre in classical music. It's like completely separate. It does not get to be in programmatic music. I wouldn't even say modern music because modern music would have like modern symphonies and modern violin concertos and stuff. But yeah, if I'm not for metal being classical music. I don't know much about metal. It just feels different, you know? It Now I sound like a classical music conservative. Oh dear. What have I turned into? I've turned into my own monster. Um I would also maybe consider putting opera in its own like category, but we can debate these more later on in future weeks. That's the general idea of classical music. It's the general answer is nobody knows. That nobody knows for sure. Nobody has it 100% right. I'll go into classical music more in the future, but not next week, because as I said last week, you need to continue learning something, or else you become an idiot. And if I just talked about what I know constantly, what I enjoy talking about, then I'm not learning anything to teach you guys. So that's stupid. I'll find something else to talk about next week. Um, Hopefully I'll have some new news, and hopefully it won't be as bad as it is this week. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good week.